Hi everyone, Renée Francoeur here from Blueline Magazine. Thanks for joining us for our Virtual Symposium and Product Showcase. Right now, we're sitting down with BlackBerry AtHoc's Mike Akpata. We'll be talking about the importance of communication in the first responder community as it relates to crisis and critical incident management. So grab a coffee, a tea, a sparkling water, and settle in for a few. Mike was actually one of the first contacts I made at my first CACP show way back in 2017 when I was the new editor of Blue Line. So I know he always has a fascinating idea or thought waiting for me. So I've got a feeling we're in for a treat. Mike, thanks for being here with us today.
Well, Renee, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So for those of us watching who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why this is such an important issue.
Well, thank you. Well, like I said, as Renee indicated, my name is Mike Akpata, and my background is why I've become very passionate and lucky to be with BlackBerry. For 21 years, I was a copper in Windsor, Ontario, across the border from Detroit. Concurrently, I was also an Army Reservist for 26 years. Fought in Afghanistan in 2007 with 2nd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment, came home bored to tears, and ran, and I'm a sitting city councillor in the town of LaSalle where I live. So when Renee said, can you give us some input on crisis communications? I've been the receiver. I've been the initiator. I found myself in critical circumstances and situations where the fog of war has clouded messages. And now with the responsibility that I have on council, I have the responsibility to make sure that our messages are clear to the community, but also clear to the agencies and entities that the town of LaSalle works with. Because as we know, a social misstep or a social miscue can be devastating not only to your reputation, but to the end goal of the communication. And so working with Blue Line, I absolutely have great respect for this magazine, although you changed your cover, and I would like you to see the cover yellow again, because when we used to wait outside offices, you'd see the pile of Blue Line magazines yellow, and you'd read up on the case laws and things of that nature. And the affinity that I have for this organization, this magazine, is that it reaches police officers, police departments, and gives them credible, validated, and vetted information. So from my perspective, to be with you today, Renee, is just a feather in my cap, because I really appreciate the fact that BlackBerry and myself can participate with the premier police magazine in Canada.
Oh, well, thank you. That warms my heart. And right back at you. We're going to always disagree about the color of our logo, but mustard yellow, I have to say mustard yellow. I have a lot of clothes in mustard yellow. So, I mean, I should agree with you. One day we're going to get a poll and I'm going to have some data to back up our move. But till then, yeah, you're always making me laugh with that. I love it. Well, Mike, the 5 communication challenges law enforcement agencies must address in 2020. I got to hear them. What are they?
Well, if you look at what's going on right now in law enforcement, not only in Canada, but across the world, you're starting to see that communication and how officers communicate or senior leaders communicate to the public has become critical. So let's look at this from my perspective, consistency of message. Without a doubt, if you are a senior police leader, the consistency in the wording that you use and the consistency in your messaging will resonate with your partners. But also, if you are leading officers in activity, light them up means multiple different things to multiple different people. Your message has to be always consistent. Your language has to be simplified, because as people are scrutinizing what officers are doing and saying, you want to make sure there's no sidestep in where you want to go. I describe it like this. Senior police leaders are on a track with a train, and they know the train's going to arrive at the station. Does it take the long way, the short way, and they want the most direct way? So communications from senior police leaders and the officers on the street needs to be consistent. My partner says the same thing in a different way, but we arrive at that same station. The next patrol car that comes when I'm not working, the messaging is the same. And those messages breed trust in the public and breed that sort of camaraderie or tightening within the organization. If senior leaders are consistent in their message, they win. And the public appreciates that.
That is huge and very well said. I like the visual of that direct train. And like you mentioned, it is extremely timely and crucial that we do pay attention to our key messaging right now. So technology, how does technology help us solve these challenges?
Well, so if we start to look at the way that technology supports, one of the things that when I was a young officer, I was told is your notebook is your friend. You write everything down in your notebook. You make sure you take good notes. And that way, 7 years later, when something comes back that you don't remember, you've got it. So the best thing that technology can do is it can simplify. It can create a concrete, untouchable audit trail. It can also be able to push out time-sensitive messages. And you can make contact with everyone you choose to make contact with. And it's got to be secure. So the auditability, I was a use of force instructor, and I had the privilege to participate with some of our officers in a number of inquests. The documentation clears you or convicts you. So the messaging that's sent out by police departments has to meet legislative requirements to make sure that the officers sending the messages are insulated. That is one of the things that technology does, is it can record, it can create audit trails, and it allows police, and I say this so respectfully, to demonstrate true transparency to everyone. This is what we sent out. This is what we did. This is why we did it. Here you go, see it. And that way, the fallback of, unfortunately, how some entities in the public space are looking at policing right now, true transparency eliminates mistrust and can start to build those bridges back that coppers are so good at doing with the community.
Wow, and that is exactly where we need to go with this. We know the public is hungry for that transparency and increased levels. So anything that can help with that, we are game.
And again, and this ties into a consistent message, right? So if the senior leaders are saying the same thing, and people can use different words and different phrases, but as long as the messaging is the same, it's documented to be the same, it becomes very, very difficult for the naysayers to say that Officer X or Chief Y did something wrong. Here's the message. Here's why it was sent out. Here's why we sent out the Amber Alert at 3 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't to wake you up and complain about ringing your cell phone. It's because a child's life is in danger. And we have a responsibility under the Act to preserve, protect, and ensure that we service the people that we do. So, you know, even if you look at some of the backlash that happened with Amber Alerts that I personally don't understand, it still is a very simple, clear, concise communication tool that's only used in time of emergency. And unfortunately, some people don't see it that way. But if their children, heaven forbid, should ever not return home at the end of the evening, they want that Amber Alert sent out. And that's the responsibility that officers have, to not take what is currently being talked about in social media as it relates to police, but continue to hold their heads up high, puff their chests out, and make sure that they do their duty under the pieces of legislation they follow. And technology ends up supporting that by the audit trail, the consistency, and the timeliness of the message by putting it in the hands of the people who need it now. Because again, there's 3 types of decisions: yes, no, and maybe. And maybe is probably the worst. And the more at speed that you're able to put your message out and notify the public or notify other officers, the better the outcome may be. Now, that doesn't mean you push out the wrong information. It means you reach out to your tactical team commanders, you reach out to the senior civilians, you get input from people, and then you decide and put something out. Because not putting something out will cause you to be criticized the same way as putting out erroneous information. So unfortunately, as a police officer or as a senior communications strategist for a police service, you've got to be right 100% of the time. And the only way you can do that is the effective use of technology and having a consistent sort of communication strategy within your organization that everybody understands that they contribute to the message.
You cannot argue with that. Exactly. And I love how you mentioned earlier, you know, we have to continue to sometimes tune out the social media noise and do our jobs and stand proud. We have an article in our August-September issue about standing proud in these times. So I appreciated you calling attention to that as well.
Well, and like I said, police officers and the civilians that support them don't do this job to be rich. It is a calling. And you meet that calling and you exceed expectations every day. So never let it be said that the naysayers should get on your bad side. You hold your head up high, you do your duty to the best of your ability, and you go home. You don't sleep on a big pile of money, but you're able to sleep because you've done your job.
Exactly. And that's why I love our audience. You know, I love that passion. All right, well, moving right along, what are the immediate next steps law enforcement agencies should take to assess their current state?
Well, I think this is now when you have to go out and look and see what people believe your message to be. I may believe that I'm the best communicator that there ever was. But if nobody understands what I've said at the end of the day, I'm fooling myself. And if that noise, that sort of fog of war, if I put my soldier hat back on, bars your message from getting to the public or who it needs to be, that's something you need to reassess. So I truly believe that if agencies reach out to their partners, whether it's the CAS, whether it's fire, whether it's EMS, or just general public, and say, we put this message out 3 days ago. Were you aware of it? Was it relevant? Did you see it? And if not, how could we do it better? And sometimes it's difficult to do that introspective look because I'm a type A personality and I believe that I've got to believe that I do everything to the best of my ability and I'm always in that line of correction. But sometimes I miss it. And if we can admit that sometimes we want to do the best, but we miss, then they'll be able to pivot and change. And something as simple as Crime Stoppers or impaired driving, that's a commonly put out message. And I think that how impaired driving had been put out with TV ads and with community service officers talking about it and traffic officers talking about it, that was a consistent message that never varied, that never changed. No police officer ever said, well, a couple of drinks is okay. The message has always been the same. And the public has received it by we see their behavior on the road. My children Uber everywhere. They go to a party. They don't even think of taking a car. And I'd like to believe it's all me, but it's the messaging that has been adopted as normal. So police departments have that ability as well. And police services can reach out and they can change that messaging and that messaging strategy to achieve their end goals, which should be tied to the community. Like Peel said, the public are the police and the police is the public. So by tying those two things together, an effective communication strategy and an effective communication tool, you will validate that your message is landing where it's supposed to be and resonating with the public that you serve.
I love how you mentioned Peel because we've been revisiting Peel's 9 principles and about that public and policing through consent. So thank you for drawing attention to that in these times. Sometimes, as one of our submissions writes, you have to go back to the basics in order to go forward. And just that reminder of the public's role in all of this helps with that messaging.
Well, and you know what? People are the same. If you take somebody from 1800 and 1700, what do they want? A house? Or not even a house. They want to be dry. They want to be warm. They want to have their families fed. It's the stuff that spins around us that changes. But the fundamental goal of people is to take care of their families, interact with each other, and be safe. And that is the requisite component that policing in Canada provides. It provides that level of safety so that other things that become important, my car, my boat, my this, my that, I can acquire. Without the contacts that your magazine reaches, some of the things that are imperative or become imperative in life wouldn't work. And those Peel's principles bring us back to stop for a second, think about who the police are. They're drawn from the public. The public is imperfect. Therefore, by default, the police are imperfect, but they're going to do their best that they can to make sure that the rest of the public need not worry about their safety and can enjoy their life without worrying about anything else.
Exactly. We're human at the end of the day.
Correct.
And for the things that we can't do, there is technology.
Exactly.
Well, Mike, BlackBerry AtHoc, thank you so much for your support and for sharing these insights today. As a communicator myself, I appreciated this conversation. And one day soon, I hope we're crossing paths and toe tapping at a trade show. Thank you.
And again, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.